Hey everybody, I know it's been a while since I've made a video like this in person, but I feel the need to stand in front of my computer screen and talk to it as if it were a real person living here listening to what I have to say. So, recently I read a little article regarding Joss Whedon and the Avengers movie. Now, because of the insane success that the Avengers movie has been receiving, DC and Warner Brothers are in talk of initiating a Justice League movie. To sum up what Joss Whedon said, he basically said, well, I got some advice for you. Call me. And on top of that, he said, if you're gonna make a movie like this featuring Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern, Flash, and all those guys, then it's going to be a lot more difficult than making an Avengers movie because the DC characters are hard to relate to, are hard to relate with. It seems like all the DC characters are from a bygone era, and their whole backstories and personalities and entire imagery seems to be very outdated to us. And Marvel is sort of superior to make an actual team movie because Marvel's characters were designed to be exactly like us. They were designed to be characters that we can identify with. Now, this intrigued me very much. On one hand, I'm kind of pissed off that Joss Whedon would say such an ignorant, biased-sounding thing, but on the other, I have to also take into consideration maybe I could just be exaggerating what he's saying. Maybe he's just saying that a Justice League movie wouldn't be impossible, but it would just be harder to pull off because people have the public perception of DC's characters, maybe with the exception of Batman, that they're all basically cartoon characters who are perfect, with the whole with the whole Super Friends, where they all just robotically agree with each other and they constantly say bad jokes that leaves everybody laughing at the end. The stereotypical, extremely bland, uninteresting Silver Age stereotype is constantly being associated with the DC characters. Maybe that's what he's saying, and that if he means that, then I agree with him, but if what he said in that regard, if he actually truly believed what he said at that point, then I have to say, Mr. Whedon, I am very disappointed in you. Now, I love Joss Whedon. He's a great storyteller. I enjoy all the shows he's done. Firefly was fucking awesome. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, from what I've seen of it, was fucking awesome. Avengers was fucking brilliant. And what makes me like him even more is that at one point he attempted to make a Wonder Woman movie, but it was rejected for obvious reasons, and that also makes me believe that maybe what he's saying about DC was maybe, I don't know, some kind of retribution for them, rejecting his Wonder Woman script, which apparently was extremely well written, and were it made into a movie, Wonder Woman wouldn't be the disgraced character that she is now currently being viewed as. So in that respect, I can sort of see where he's coming from, but then again, everything that I am saying here is pure speculation. But the whole notion that DC characters, he said that DC's characters are unrelatable is just simply not true. Because I've heard this discussion among all Marvel and all DC fans that I've heard people just say Marvel's better because I can relate to its characters. DC's characters are just put on way too high of a pedestal for me to identify with them. Now, there are only a few characters in DC that I could really honestly view in that regard, you know. But you know something else? There are some characters in Marvel I could view through that type of looking glass. There are some Marvel characters that I could completely identify as being unrelatable. Okay, one very big instance is the Hulk. Now I know a lot of you are saying that oh well, the Hulk, how dare you rag on the Hulk? Well, I'm not ragging on the Hulk, but let's be realistic here, that a guy who mutates and transforms into a giant green invincible rage monster every time he gets angry, that nothing can stop and nothing can destroy or kill, that doesn't come across to me as very relatable, because in a sense that's always come across to me as, if you get angry, then nobody's gonna want to fuck with you. In fact, nothing will be able to stop you, which is completely untrue. I mean, you could make the argument that, oh, Hulk is always being harassed by Ross and, you know, the Abomination and the Leader and all those guys, but that's not the point. The point is that, to me, the Hulk is not a relatable character because he turns into a giant green rage monster that can literally destroy anything. To me, that just sort of gives off this very, very big negative moral that, you know, it's okay to get angry because there won't be any consequences, and, you know, and nothing will be able to stop you, and that pretty much everybody will submit to you when you are angry. And to me, that's very, very morally bad. And to me, it sort of represents a contorted sense of ethics. Then that doesn't really come across to me as the character being relatable. That's like saying that the Punisher is relatable. I can't identify with the Punisher because the Punisher does a very rash and a very wrong thing to do. Because just because gangsters killed the Punisher's parents, the Punisher goes out and he literally collects a huge arsenal of guns and he slaughters every single criminal he comes across. I can't really relate with this guy because I can't identify with him. I would never do what he's doing because I'm not like him. And to me, going out and actually shooting every single criminal out there is wrong. But see, with a character like the Punisher, I can just forget about relating to him and just suspend my disbelief, read his stories, and just enjoy them. I can sort of understand a little bit of where Frank is coming from, but I just can't really agree with his ideals and his morals. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that characters like that sort of represent that notion, I can't really identify with. I mean, I can understand the fact that he can, you know, that he desperately tries to control himself, to self-discipline himself so that he doesn't get angry. But honestly, man, whenever everything has gone to crap for him, then he can always fall back on the Hulk to get him out of bad, sticky situations. And to me, that's never been very relatable. That's never made me very much identify with him. I'm not saying that I dislike the Hulk. I love the Hulk. Another character that I could view as not being very relatable is Thor. For obvious reasons. You know, he's a god, he's royalty. Oh, if he wants to summon an immense amount of power, then all he has to do, or at least what he used to have to do, was that he would just bang his cane on the down, and then all of a sudden, poof, he's Thor. You know, he's the god of thunder and all that. And you could go with Hercules, another Greek mythological god type figure. And on top of that, look at Black Panther, who is the king of his own country. He's insanely wealthy and he's insanely powerful. And on top of that, he's been training to be a master fighter and assassin and warrior ever since he was a small kid. So Black Panther is not exactly a relatable character. And on top of that, I believe Marvel is also in works of making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. The Guardians of the Galaxy are not exactly what I would consider to be extremely relatable characters. I mean, the fact is that these are a bunch of really unusual alien, space fighters who go on all sorts of crazy-ass adventures. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that they sort of, they have conflicting opinions with each other. In that respect, they're sort of like the Fantastic Four, but, DC has plenty of teams that argue and bicker amongst each other. For example, look at The Outsiders. A group of superheroes that was created in the 1980s that Batman formed because Batman was really sick of the Justice League being held back by a whole bunch of political red tape. And so he forms the Outsiders to be, a group that wouldn't be bound by the rules, and it would just sort of rise against all the oppressive aspects of modern society and, speak for the oppressed people. And in the sense, the Outsiders was made up of a team of extremely relatable characters. Extremely relatable characters. Not to mention, it was created by what most people consider to be the single most relatable DC character, which is Batman. It doesn't end there. I mean, other relatable DC characters, you got the Teen Titans, which were basically totally created to be DC's answer to the X-Men. The Teen Titans is full of pretty flawed characters. I mean, one of its members, Beast Boy, or Changeling, or whatever you want to call him, was a part of the Doom Patrol, and that's another team of, characters who are flawed and insecure and very much identifiable. And the ironic thing is that the Doom Patrol were created before the X-Men were created. And let's not forget about one of the most famous and probably one of the greatest creations of the late great Dwayne McDuffie, Static Shock, who was in pretty much every right DC's equivalent to Spider-Man. In fact, that was the character that McDuffie had even modeled Virgil Hawkins after, was Spider-Man. In a sense that he's a young, nerdy-ass kid who's extremely smart, who does really well in school, but, he's constantly bullied by people, and he has a family that he's trying to look after, and he's just trying to get by and pay his bills just like everybody else. And on top of that, he goes through this whole arc of trying to help out his fellow people and not roll around with some really bad gangs. Another character just like him, Jaime Reyes, the third Blue Beetle. A character who was actually willing to share his superhero identity with his family. I can go on. Look at Green Arrow's sidekick, Speedy. In the early 70s, there was a comic book run where Roy Harper was literally addicted to heroin. I'm sorry, I got those two drugs mixed up. But yeah, Roy Harper was going through a bad fit of heroin addiction. That's pretty relatable. And also during the 70s, you had Green Arrow and Green Lantern, which was a very politically heavy comic that talked about a lot of different political issues, and you had a scene that developed Hal Jordan a whole lot as a character, where a black guy talks to him and says that, "Oh, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Lantern," or whatever he calls him, "you've rescued guys who who had green colored skin, purple colored skin, red colored skin. So when are you actually going to do something for us black skinned folks? And then Hal Jordan just looks down and he just broods and he just goes all emo and he goes, I don't know. That was a great moment in the comic. That was a great moment that reflected a whole lot of political ideals and stuff. Because Green Arrow, he obviously represented the liberal part of society, whereas Hal Jordan was a very conservative character. I'd say that makes that whole spectrum pretty damn realistic. So, Whedon, I'm sorry, but when you make a statement like that, it really sounds like that you really don't know what you're talking about. And considering that you used to be a comic book writer yourself, considering that you used to write freaking Astonishing X-Men. This is the guy who wrote Astonishing X-Men and, gave all the characters in there, some of their facelifts. Like, he's the guy who wrote the comics where Cyclops wore an outfit that had, the black bald outfit covering his head, and where Hank McCoy looked like a cat for some reason, and where Emma Frost joined the team. At least that's what I remember. I may be wrong about that, but all I know for a fact that Joss Whedon wrote Astonishing X-Men. He was a comic book writer, and therefore I believe that he must know more than this. But then again, like I said, he could simply be talking out of underdeveloped rage. And I believe that he secretly wants DC to make a Justice League centered movie, because the fact that he brought Thanos into the Avengers movie, that just makes me secretly think that he wanted this Wonder Woman script of his to kick off into something truly grand, like pretty much what he did with Avengers, where he would inspire DC to make a whole bunch of DC character related movies, like Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, Green Arrow, Hawkman, Martian Manhunter, all these guys, to actually make a Justice League movie. And I believe that the main bad guy he intended for that movie was Darkseid. Again, that's just purely guessing on my part. But, Thanos was sort of... It just seems to me Thanos is sort of like a very stereotypical villain to go with, to me, because I don't know if Whedon was totally thinking of Darkseid, but just the whole way that the Avengers movie was set up, it almost seemed like a blueprint to me for like an unmade Justice League movie. And in that respect, I think DC should try to analyze it further and try to, learn from it and stuff. But also the fact that Whedon mentions that the DC characters are from a bygone era, that also bothers me greatly, because it's also a statement that's completely incorrect. Because let me take a look at this. One more DC character I could completely present as being relatable is Barbara Gordon, former Batgirl, former Oracle, and is now Batgirl again for some reason. But when Barbara Gordon was crippled by the Joker and she was bound to the wheelchair and made into Oracle, she had this big character arc where she felt like she was completely worthless to Batman and his whole gang of crime fighters, because she believes that since she couldn't use her legs anymore, that she was useless. She couldn't be Batgirl, so she couldn't go out and fight crime alongside Bruce. But she grew and developed into more of a helper character, as to more of an information provider to Bruce. But she still has this feeling of, damn it, I hate being in this wheelchair all the time. I wish I could actually go out and do stuff that's more important and significant. And I think in that respect, Barbara is an extremely relatable character. Because we can all identify with not being able to help out with stuff we really want to, and feeling unimportant and insignificant. But anyways, back to what I was saying. I feel like maybe there are some Justice League characters that are regarded by others with a big sense of like almost superstitious awe. For example, you have Superman, and you have Wonder Woman, you have Batman, you have the Flash, you have Green Lantern, you have Hawkman and Aquaman. Those are the characters to me. Oh, and Green Arrow. Those are the characters to me that that could pretty much be seen as the most influential and the most, and the most iconic or the most godlike. You could also go with the Justice Society too. Those are the characters that I believe probably most people would consider to be unrelatable because they're put on such a high pedestal, as they're viewed as being very much above everybody else. But the thing is, pretty much most everybody else in the DC universe looks up to these people, and all these people are role models to them. Because, for example, the Flash, Barry Allen has, I can't begin how many supporting characters and followers. You got Kid Flash, you got Impulse, you've got all the subsequent, you got Wally West, and you got Wally West. You've got all these subsequent characters who keep inheriting the mantle of the Flash. Even Jay Garrick, who looks to Barry as, a symbol to, continue being the Flash even in his old age. And even with Batman, you have all the various characters that he has influenced, such as aforementioned Barbara Gordon, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, all the above. See, these 7 characters that I previously mentioned are looked up to by almost all the other characters. Now, I'm sure there are other characters who are in this same category who I failed to mention. But the previous superhero teams that I mentioned, such as the Outsiders, the Teen Titans, and all various superhero teams that are like them, they look up to these characters and they view them as being the figureheads of how they would do things right. They view them as being the standards. They're the people they think of when they would think of, what would Superman do, or what would Batman or Wonder Woman or the Flash or any of them do. They're the characters that are regarded and revered, as sort of the war heroes, or the conquering generals, or like the Alexander the Great, or Napoleon the Conquerors. There are these celebrities that everybody models their own actions and even their own appearances after. Look at Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is another fantastic example of a relatable character. He's a freak. He starts out as a freaking comic book or internet artist. I forget what type of artist he is, but he's an artist. He's a freaking artist. He's a nerd who is given a power ring. And he tries to follow in the footsteps of Hal Jordan. That is extremely relatable. That we want to live up to our elders. We want to live up to the standard that they created. That we want to try to do justice to their legacy while all the same creating a legacy of our own. That's the way I look at it anyways. Now, how do I close out this video? I guess I should probably close out this video by saying that, Mr. Whedon, this statement hasn't really caused me to think any less of you. And as for the statement that if DC has trouble handling the Avengers movie, call me. I can't say I disagree with that, because after the way you handled the Avengers, I would do the exact same thing. So honestly, I won't berate you for that. I really believe people need to stop conflicting with each other over Marvel and DC and debating which company is better, because in my opinion, Marvel and DC is about the same nowadays, because both companies have resorted to using ridiculous amounts of blood and gore in their comics, ridiculous amounts of sexual innuendos, and sort of partial PG-13-esque nudity. And on top of that, both companies have had characters that have randomly turned into complete psychopaths. But the most important part is that they both have about an equal amount of relatable and unrelatable characters. So, my honest opinion is that there is no discernible difference between Marvel and DC, maybe except for their pasts. And on top of that, Joss Whedon's statements, I honestly don't think that he truly believes it. Because a man as smart as he is wouldn't make a claim like that sounds so stupid and ignorant. And on top of that, be open-minded towards DC trying to get a foothold in its live-action movie department. So yeah, I'm FW Waller, and this has been a rant. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment. Goodbye.